Part 174. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1731. That's why Magistrate Tang became more and more worried. What does he have to envy for such a thankless thing? It was saying that the magistrate Guo was jealous that he took the case in the palace. Yang Hesha said, Master Yin is your immediate boss. The two major cases in the palace were transferred to you, which shows how much he values you. The magistrate Guo has been in office in Wanyan County for 4 years. There are 2 in 2 years. Yang Hesha said calmly, Guo County in the capital, even if it is important, one person has been in office for 10 years. After a long time, not to mention blocking the way of the people below, even His Majesty is annoying. Chang'an County and Wanyan County are different from other counties. The magistrates of the 2 counties have no superiors such as governors and jidushi, only Jingzaiyin, and Jingzaiyin is the emperor. In the entire Jin dynasty, they only listened to the orders of these 2 people, and they also had to go to court every time they met. A tough county magistrate, especially the Chang'an County magistrate, can not only manage the royal family, but also the emperor. In the palace, they are monarchs and ministers, but outside the palace, the magistrate is the parent's official, and no matter how old the emperor is, he is also a subject. Therefore, for the sake of stability, the magistrates of the 2 counties were re-elected longer than those of the other counties. Basically, those who end their terms in 1 or 2 terms are either too mediocre and unable to bear the burden, or they are too powerful and have made too many merits, so that the emperor is not reconciled if he does not transfer people to more critical positions. However, the magistrate of Guo obviously does not belong to the 2, but the magistrate of Tang. Yang Hesha glanced at him, shook his head and smiled. He is afraid that you will enter Jingzhou Mansion 1 step earlier than him. Tang County magistrate said, I want to go to the Ministry of Punishment, I don't want to go to Jingzhou Mansion. After leaving the palace, Magistrate Tang exhaled, pulled the horse from the servants waiting outside the palace, and looked at Yang Hesha after getting on the horse. Stay up with me at night. Yang Hesha shook his head and refused. The children at home are not very obedient, they have been crying a lot these 2 nights, so I have to go back. The Tang County magistrate smiled, why, you should avoid suspicion now. Yang Hesha gave him a warning look and said, I shouldn't have gone to the observation tower to help you ask questions today. I know, Tang magistrate said with a smile, I'm not afraid that it will take a long time and others will sweep away the traces. I can't trust others, but you and I can still trust you. Yang Hesha also got on the horse, pulled on the rope, and let the horse take 2 steps forward and say, go check it out, I'll go back first. Magistrate Tang couldn't force it either, and could only run home with the documents and Mingli. As soon as he got home, he said hello to his wife and went to work in the study, even eating meat patties for dinner. This saves time and effort, you can hold the gnaw in one hand, and the other hand and eyes can continue to work. Tang magistrate felt that something was wrong when he asked at the observation tower, and when he looked at these confessions together, he realized what was wrong. The people who were circled seemed to have a good relationship with Suyu, but when I asked deeper, they knew that they didn't know much about Suyu, except that she had an aunt in the capital who would come every month on her return day. I don't know anything other than her. And those people who think they play better with Suyu, it's not that they play well with Suyu, but they play well with each other, it's just that they think that Suyu is also one of them, that's why they have that an illusion. Tang County magistrate was busy in the middle of the night, and found this pattern after writing the names of these people in rows on the paper. He covered his head with a headache. Now, no matter who is behind Suyu, it's just that Suyu is very powerful. Magistrate Tang looked at the people under the different arrows on the paper and pondered, so are there any people in the same disguise as her? Magistrate Tang picked up the statement on the side and read it again, and circled a few names with some hesitation after a while. Madame Tang had already slept and found that the light was still on in the study, so she couldn't help getting up and putting on her clothes to look at him. She reached out and touched his teacup, and seeing that the tea inside was cold, she turned her head to look at Mingli, who lay on the couch and fell asleep. She secretly glared at Akari, who was asleep, then turned around and picked up the teapot on the stove to pour water for him. Tang County Magistrate heard the sound of pouring water and said without turning his head, "I don't drink water anymore, you can take a rest, and you will be ready to go out in a while." Madame Tang reached out and twisted his ear, "You also know that you will be ready to go out in a while." Only then did Mr. Tang realize that it was Madame Tang, and immediately put down the information in his hand and shook her hand to please her. "Why did Madame come here? Listen, is the chicken crowing?" When Master Tang heard it, it was true. Mrs. Tang twisted his shoulder again and said, "I don't care how busy you are, you always have to sleep." Man Bao said that staying up late will not only lose your hair and grow old, but also die quickly. If you don't want me to be a widow, hurry up and go back to sleep. Master Tang was pulled, and he had no choice but to put away the documents and lock them in a cabinet to go back to the house with her. But he couldn't sleep even when he lay on the bed, and he was still thinking about the case. Madame Tang was in a daze and was about to fall asleep. She rolled over and opened her eyes. She glanced unconsciously and found that he was still open. "What's the matter? Isn't there a snowfall recently? It's a bit bigger, but it's the first snow after all. Do you need to worry so much?" She said, "It's really not good. Tomorrow I will ask someone to set up a porridge shed to cook more porridge." "Don't, you'd better keep it for now. There will be more snowy days in the capital, and a porridge shed will be set up later." Now His Majesty and Zhao Qiuagong Pai Qiuagong threw food into the county government office. "I don't even bother to cook, so I went back and checked. The list will be directly distributed, and people will take it home and cook it for themselves. It's not about the snow, what is it? Yesterday, no, it was the day before yesterday. 2 servants in the East Palace died the night before yesterday. Obviously, this matter hasn't spread to the outside, so Mrs. Tang didn't know it yet," she said. "Didn't the Crown Princess give birth to the little grandson? It's because of the birth of the little emperor's grandson. When the servant in the East Palace went to pick up Zhou Man, someone changed the needle bag in Zhou Man's medicine box." Madame Tang woke up suddenly. Master Tang said, "Zhou Man found out early, so he didn't use the needle. After finding out, the needle was soaked with medicines for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis, and promoting water and purging." After Mrs. Tang was shocked, she looked at Master Tang suspiciously, and turned to look at him. "Why are you telling me this? In such a fatal case, he usually hides it from her." Tang County Magistrate looked at her with deep eyes and said, "Chang Bo and I checked for a day today, and found that this time the person behind the scenes was hiding deeper than Prince Gong, and it may be lost in the end." Madame Tang was stunned for a moment, looked him in the eye and asked, "What do you mean? In this palace, besides His Majesty, the Empress and the Crown Prince, who else has more power than Prince Gong?" Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1732. Madame Tang sneered and said, "Who else is there, the Queen Mother?" She said this for a while, and her face slowly became condensed. "No, it won't be the Empress Dowager, she has no reason to do this, that is." Master Tang said with deep eyes, "In that palace wall, there is actually a force that can compete with your Majesty and the Empress." Madame Tang froze for a moment, then slapped him on the chest and said angrily, "Okay, Tang's Hai He, you test me." Master Tang was slapped on the chest with a palm, and he rolled up in pain, and hurriedly shouted, "Injustice, Madam has been wronged. What kind of temptation is this? I am obviously taking the risk to remind you. Bah, do you think I'm stupid? Let me tell you, my royal family didn't get involved in this matter, and we don't have an empress in the palace, let alone a prince. Why do our family get involved in this matter? After Mrs. Tang said this, she thought of something, and immediately leaned into his ear and said, "The Yang family." Master Tang sighed, "Changbo is avoiding suspicion now, otherwise I wouldn't be busy for half the night by myself." Mrs. Tang didn't speak for a long time, leaned on the pillow and said, "In this way, even Changbo suspects her. Don't, this cousin's house is still different from his own." "What's the difference?" "He is the direct branch of the Long House, and most of the people in the palace are in the hands of Lord Yang. Even if it was done there, I don't believe that Lord Yang doesn't know at this moment." Master Tang stopped talking, but his heart was indeed more worried. Madame Tang sighed and said, "Yang Hao he doesn't know what to think, Changbo is so smart and capable, what's the point of being a foreign relative? Yang Jiazhen has become a foreign relative. With so many capable ministers in the court, how many can he have? Opportunity. But without that layer of identity, it's just a matter of time for him to be named a prince. Today, he is wise and strong, but Zhao Qiuagong must always avoid suspicion and hand over military power early. In terms of qualifications and abilities, he is not weaker than Wei Ji. However, when Wei Zhiji took over the job of Jixiang, there was only one place left. Zhao Qiuagong was still only Zhao Qiuagong, and he led the position under Li Shangshu in the Ministry of War. Master Tang sighed, "I'm afraid this is not just what the Yang family means." Madame Tang glanced at it, "What do you mean, or do you doubt my Wang family?" Master Tang shook his head slightly and said, "There are thousands of people in your Taiyuan Wang family. No matter how capable your father-in-law is, he can control everyone. Besides, there are Lanja Wang family, Bihai Wang family, and Kui family in addition to Wang family. What about a big family like the Lu family? Mrs. Tang, they have nothing to do when they are full to harm the grandson." In August, Dali Temple reported a case, saying that the official land in the Qinghe area was almost invaded, and the officials who took office, not to mention the county magistrates, even the prefects could not get enough work land. Master Tang lowered his voice and said, "Some county magistrates can only knock down their teeth and swallow blood, and lead a small salary and money to live, while others go to encircle and occupy civilian fields, and use good fields to fill their fields, and finally cause troubles. Come, 2 families died, because officials committed the crime, so the case was handed over to Dali Temple. Originally, the sentence was silently handed down, but in August, the county official's family went to Beijing to make a fuss about the matter, suing the common people for encroaching on the job field. The magistrate was severely sentenced because of favoritism." Master Tang said, "At that time, the Mid-Autumn Festival was going to be celebrated in the palace, and many foreign envoys came to the court. In order not to lose face, the matter was temporarily suppressed, but the case was transferred from Dali Temple. Censor's desk, it's up to my father to check. Last month, the general matter has been investigated. The county official was not wronged, but he was sentenced to a heavy sentence and exiled to Kyungshu." Tang Daran said, "But the official's family is right, the Qinghe area, even the official fields of the 6 counties can hardly be found." Madame Tang opened her mouth in surprise. The case went to Dali Temple, and when the officials started to tell the truth, Dali Temple quickly sentenced them. Madame Tang asked nervously, "Your Majesty wants to investigate the encroachment of official land. It's not just about encroaching on official land, but also about occupying civilian land and enclosing land. My father said that His Majesty wants to polish the Crown Prince, and most of this will fall on the Crown Prince." Master Tang said with deep eyes, "You don't look at His Majesty always scolding the Crown Prince. He is not satisfied with the Crown Prince either, but their father and son are the most similar, not only in temperament, but also in political opinions. They rarely disagree in this regard, so His Royal Highness the Prince, if he is willing to teach, he is likely to be the next His Majesty." Master Tang didn't know what those adults thought, but he actually agreed with this prince. Therefore, the prince's temperament will be very tiring when he is an emperor and his courtiers. He may be as self-willed as the emperor when he was young. But don't look at the first 2 years, just look at the performance of the prince in the past 6 months and a long time ago, and you will know that although he is funny, he is also diligent in politics. Although he has a big temper, he can still listen to persuasion most of the time. The most important thing is that he can control so many powerful officials in the DPRK and China. To be honest, Tang He and Yang Heshu had also privately picked up several princes from the emperor. After counting them, the prince was the most suitable. The second prince has no ambitions, and only focuses on eating, drinking, and having fun. King Guangping is deep-minded but short-sighted, Prince Gong is narrow-minded, benevolent, and too hypocritical. He is more capricious than the prince, and his ears are too soft. I heard that I wanted to eat kuakui in the morning, but the people around me said a few words, and immediately changed to eat noodles. The sixth prince is not only young, but also from the princess of the previous dynasty. He must be inappropriate. But what they think is appropriate, those adults may not think so. Tang Daren said, I don't know what to look for in the end. My husband has already felt it. If I find out, my life may be gone. If I can't find out, my husband's official position may be gone. Madame Tang asked him, what do you want? Master Tang said, I want to find out to the end. As long as there are still clues, I will check it down. Master Tang stretched out his hand to hold her, and said with tears in his eyes, Madam, if your husband really leaves you, you should leave the child to my father and remarry yourself. Madame Tang slapped him in the face angrily, and said angrily, what is Hu Lily? Check it out, I'll see which bastard dares to kill you. She said with anger, our Wang family is not vegetarian. Master Tang just grabbed her hand and didn't speak. It wasn't until it was almost dawn that he closed his eyes and fell asleep for a while. Master Tang wiped his face with cold water, and then Mrs. Tang just rubbed a handful of moisturizing cream on his face, and then he broke free and went to work. Master Tang, Madam, please protect me. Next update around 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1733. Master Tang was really busy, so he first went to the county office and looked at the reports from his subordinates. 5 houses collapsed, and one of them was a fight between the husband and wife that night on the snowy night. Originally, the house was not stable. When they were fighting, they kicked a few feet and knocked the house down. Master Tang has been a county magistrate for many years. What kind of situation have you never seen? Asked, where are the people? The county commander said, everyone is fine. I'm lucky this year. Although the first snow was a bit heavier, no one died from freezing. Now everyone is temporarily housed in the Shantang, but the 5 households are all dragged from their families, let alone them. Whether you want it or not, the people in the Shantang are not very willing, and there are 2 families who are quite mixed, and they started to bully the children in the Shantang after only 2 days of living. Master Tang snorted coldly and said directly, pull these 5 active families to the place to build a house. Naturally, my own house has to be built by myself. The county government will provide some wood, and then find some people to help, and when to build the house for them within days. It's so cold that the world is frozen, but it's not easy to build. It's enough if you have the strength, can't you be able to bully others? It can be seen that you have a lot of strength, not to mention building a house for your own, don't you waste your strength. Tang County Magistrate said, there is a drought this year, you will report the difficulties this autumn. Check the account again to see if there are any new additions. If not, after 2 days of approval, the food sent by His Majesty and the others will be distributed, and let them come to receive it. The other households. Do you think other people's families are short of that small packet of food? Tang County Magistrate asked, is it my family's lack of food, or your family's lack of drink? The county lieutenant understood. He smiled, and said, isn't this big guy heard that the food is because His Majesty and Zhao Qiagong Pai Qiagong sent them to pray for the emperor's grandson? Everyone wants to get lucky. You will be blessed when you distribute food to those who need it. Master Tang did not enter the palace until he was busy. Today, I want to check the medicine dispensing records of the Taiyuan hospital, check the situation of each palace gate, and ask about the taste and medicinal materials. Master Tang took the record and asked Eunuch Wu, that is to say, to boil medicine in each hall, either in the kitchen or in the pharmacy. Yes, this is the rule. You didn't cook it privately? Eunuch Wu said with a smile, of course there are, but it's fine if they are not found. Once they are found, they will be expelled to the Epidemic Prevention Center. And medicine has a smell, and it is impossible to hide it from others. How does the kitchen know what medicine they are boiling? Generally, the kitchen will ask to prevent anyone from harming others. Tang County Magistrate, what if someone is lying? It's up to the adults to judge. Tang County Magistrate nodded slightly, glanced at the list on the case, and began to draw in circles, since the needle will be soaked for 3 days, and the medicine will need to be changed once in the middle, just check the prescription for the previous 6 days. He said, check the medicines that have been boiled in the kitchens of the various halls in the past 6 days, and pick up the buried medicinal residues so that the imperial physicians of the Taiyuan hospital can distinguish them. Only the archives of the Taiyuan hospital and the kitchens and medicine residues of the various halls can be matched. Eunuch Wu paused and said, there is also a small kitchen over here at the Taiji temple. The magistrate Tang raised his head and smiled, I also investigate. He turned over the case and found the records on the Taiji temple side, and said, the medicine that Man Bao took, is it for Lord Gu? Tang County Magistrate frowned, Master Gu is sick. How could he still serve the emperor closely when he was sick? How did Eunuch Wu know? His face was innocent. Tang County Magistrate thought for a while, then turned his head and said to the subordinate beside him, go back and call Zhou Man. He now occupies a room in the Chongguan Hall for office, which is in the same yard as Bai Shan's school, while Man Bao usually works in the library next to him. So it's easy to call someone. Man Bao came happily, Brother Tang, did you call me? Master Tang looked up at her and asked, why are you so happy? It's nothing, it's just that the Imperial Physician's office has started school today, and the day after tomorrow I'll be leaving the palace to go to class. You are so busy, can you go out to play after class? The good news that Man Bao got this morning was a little discounted, but she was still happy. Anyway, I'm happy to be out of the palace. Congratulations to you then. I'm looking at the medication records of the Taiyuan hospital. I found that you seem to often prescribe prescriptions for Master Gu. Is Master Gu sick? Oh, this is the medicinal herb for foot soaking, Man Bao said with only one glance. Master Gu has some old wounds on his body, as well as rheumatism, cloudy and rainy days, and such snowy days that are particularly uncomfortable, so I started 2 months ago. I gave him a prescription for conditioning. What's wrong? Magistrate Tang shook his head, it's nothing, you go down. Man Bao turned around and was about to go down, when a waiter hurried in, lowered his head and reported, Eunuch Wu, Master Tang, talk back and forth with the Department of Penalties, Su Yu is going to die. Tang County Magistrate frowned, got up and asked, why can't you do it? You are not allowed to watch her, she is not allowed to commit suicide, and no outsiders are allowed to visit. You must be careful about what you enter. The father-in-laws of the Prudential Penalty Department have seen it and said that the punishment is too severe and the fever is too high. I'm afraid they won't survive it. Magistrate Tang frowned, glanced at Man Bao who was standing beside the door, then turned to Wu Gonggong and said, "Su you can't die yet, we'll have to wait until we're done investigating. If the problem doesn't lie in the palace, then outside the palace. And to deliver the poisonous needle to Su Yu so quickly, there must be a lot of people involved, so she has to live." Eunuch Wu said, "Ouch, Master Tang, I also want her to be alive, but I'm not a Deluo immortal either, so she can live if she lives. Take the person out and send it back to the Chongquen Museum, and let Man Bao go and treat it." This. Eunuch Wu looked at Zhou Man hesitantly. He didn't have any objections, but Su Yu was a suspect after all. Is Zhou Xiao-sama still willing to go to justice? Man Bao has already nodded and said, "Okay, you can bring people and send them back to her house. There is still a palace maid in her house, and I will let her move to another place temporarily." Eunuch Wu said to Zhou Man with a smile, "Lord Zhou Xiao is really a bodhisattva, and all this will be done for you." Man Bao nodded, turned around and said, "Then you bring people, I'll go to the Thai hospital to get some medicine." After she was gone, Eunuch Wu turned his head and nodded to his subordinates, then looked at Magistrate Tang, "Is your lord trying to lure snakes out of their holes?" Master Tang said, "No way, we still have less information now. People don't want to die once they die. No matter how strong Su Yu's heart is, if he comes back to life after dying, maybe he will figure it out." He said, "It doesn't matter if she can't figure it out. We can let the people behind her think she has figured it out. As long as they move again, we can always catch the handle." See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1734. Chapter 1733 Blood Water. Man Bao had just gone out when he met Bai Shan and the others after school. The group was about to go back for lunch when they saw Man Bao and ran up to ask, "Where are you going?" Man Bao said, "You can keep the meals for me, I have to go to the Thai hospital to get some medicine." After thinking about it, she said, "Su Yu is seriously ill, I'm afraid it's going to die, Tang Xuexian wants me to save her." Bai Shan was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, let's go, forget it, I'll go with you, it's not convenient for you to carry a lot of things by yourself." Man Bao was about to refuse, but Bai Shan had already dragged her to the Imperial Hospital. After leaving the East Palace and walking in the corridor, Bai Shan Ke said, "Xuexian Tang wants to use Su Yu as bait, what kind of meat are you chasing?" Man Bao said, "Just try it, maybe it can lead people out." "If it were me, I would choose Su Yu to start, not you." Man Bao, "Then why are you angry?" Bai Shan, "Why is he just angry?" The two walked to the Thai hospital, and Man Bao thought about Su Yu's situation. Although he hadn't felt his pulse yet, since it was a torture injury, the medicines used were probably similar. Man Bao then listed a long recipe for Imperial Physician Lu. Imperial Doctor Lu looked at it and said, "Give a female prisoner such a good medicine." Man Bao said, "I haven't confirmed it yet. Basically, people who enter the Department of Prudential Punishment rarely come out alive, regardless of whether they are really wronged or the real murderer. Such a good medicine is wasted." Although he said it was a waste, Imperial Physician Lu still signed a form for her to go to the pharmacy to get medicine. Man Bao and Bai Shan carried a pile of medicines back to Chongquen Museum. Su Yu even brought it over. Her clothes were almost covered in blood. Man Bao touched her forehead, turned to Bai Shan and said, "You can go eat, I'll just come here." Bai Shan glanced at it and turned to leave. After a while, Bai Erlang and Yin or two came over and asked outside the door, "Is there anything I can help you with?" Su Yu was still a suspect. In Chongquen Hall, both the servants and the maids avoided her, and Man Bao didn't call them, so they all hid, and there seemed to be no one in the whole yard. The servant who had just brought the man over also left. Eunuch Wu said, "Su Yu is now the bait, and in order to lure the snake out, they had to loosen it up a bit, so that they would be able to start, so the room was only full of treasures. When Man Bao turned his head, he found that all the people had run away, and he was speechless for a while. He could only complain to Keek in his heart, while using scissors to cut all the clothes on Suyu's body. As soon as he heard Bai Erlang's voice, Man Bao immediately stepped forward and pulled the screen over to block the bed, and then said, "Come in, there is medicine on the table outside, I will read a prescription, you grab the medicine and help me boil it." Bai Erlang and Yin He pushed open the door and came in. Seeing that the table was full of medicine bags, they turned over and asked, "There are so many medicines, okay, what medicine do you want?" Man Bao then twisted the towel to wipe off the blood on her body while reciting the prescription. Bai Erlang and Yin Or, one was because he grew up with Zhou Man, and he knew most of the commonly used medicinal herbs, the other was because he took medicine all the year round. So I have learned some medical theory by myself, and I am not unfamiliar with these medicines. So Man Bao read the prescription, and even though the two of them were a little scrambled and clumsy, they still weighed all the medicinal names. Yin Or began to search the whole room, where are the medicine jars? Bai Erlang also followed, and Man Bao said, there should be a stove and a jar in the corner of the room, you can look for it again. Man Bao has already started to give Suyu acupuncture to reduce fever and save his life. Bai Erlang also followed along, and finally the two of them squatted in the corner and looked at a jar and said, is this supposed to be? Yin He said, it's not like the medicine jars we usually use at home. Bai Erlang picked it up and said, whatever it is, you can cook something. Come on, I'll go out and fill it with water. Yin He said, let's ask again, what if this is not a medicine? When the two were arguing, Bai Shan finally ran back after he was full and asked, what are you arguing about? Didn't you come to help? Yin He pointed to the jar and asked Bai Shan, Man Bao asked us to boil medicine, but this jar doesn't seem to be a medicine jar. Bai Shan stepped forward, opened the jar and glanced at it, then directly put it into Bai Erlang and said, okay, let's go get some water. He said to Yin He, I don't care if it's a medicine for now. It can hold water and cook it on fire. He walked to the screen and asked Man Bao, is there anything else? Man Bao had already stabbed all the needles, took a basin of bloody water and walked out and stuffed it into his hand, change a basin of hot water. Yin Or suddenly saw such a pot of blood and couldn't help shaking it, and turned his head with a pale face. Bai Shan and Man Bao couldn't help but glance at him. Bai Shan wondered, what happened to you? Man Bao asked, are you afraid of blood? Yin Or shook his head, I just feel a little stuffy all of a sudden, I'm going out to get some air. Then he turned around and went out. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other, both shrugged, then Bai Shan took the tub and went out to change the water, while Man Bao returned to the screen to continue to deal with Suyu's injuries. There is still hot water in the small kitchen. This is the palace, and it is winter, so hot water is always available. Although people have made various excuses to run out, the hot water is still there. Bai Shan turned around, he hadn't done much work in the palace, and he didn't know where to put this basin of blood. This basin of blood water is different from other waste water, so it can't be poured into the wastewater tank, right? So after turning around, he looked left and right, and seeing that there was no one in the whole yard, he poured blood into the flower bed. Seeing that the blood and water seeped into the soil with two grunts, I could hardly see the difference between blood and no blood, so I nodded in satisfaction, and turned to the small kitchen to collect water. Suyu had blood stains from whiplashes, burns from a branding iron, and various blood stains. After Man Bao had been scrubbed and applied with medicine, 4 basins of blood had been removed. Bai Shan poured the last basin of blood into the flower bed, and seeing that the water was going down a little slowly, he squatted down and watched with a little sadness. When the magistrate Tang came, he saw the last bit of stagnant water and stubbornly refused to go down. The red water and the bloody smell made him think with his toes what kind of water it was. He glanced at the flower bed quickly and saw that the soil in such a short section of the flower bed was wet, so he couldn't help asking, "How much blood did you pour into it?" Bai Shanzhen was staring intently at the bloody water, when the county magistrate Tang suddenly said something so frightening that his heart beat violently a few times, and he almost fell to the ground. "Brother Tang, you almost scared me to death." Master Tang bent down and poked him on the forehead, and asked, "Who taught you to pour blood here? It's still winter, and there was a heavy snowfall a few days ago, so you're not afraid of the water. Are the roots soaked?" Bai Shan said embarrassedly, "I didn't think about it for a while. I can't just pour the water into the wastewater tank, right?" Tang County Magistrate said, "Going out of the courtyard and walking forward for a while is the wastewater canal." Bai Shan said, "It's too far." Tang County Magistrate said, "I'm too lazy to do it." He glanced at the room where the smell of medicine wafted out and asked, "How is the person?" "Good night." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1735. Bai Shan shook his head. "Man Bao is still dealing with it, and we can't be of much help." Master Tang entered the room and took a look. Seeing that Yin He and Bai Erlang had their backs facing the stove where he was guarding the medicine, he glanced at the screen across from them. He only vaguely saw Man Bao sitting, and he didn't know what to do with his hands. He swept around the room. He had come here once during the search before, and he had a general idea of the furnishings in the room. He walked to the table, picked up the teacup on the table and looked at it, and asked, "Where are the people in this yard?" Bai Shan brought in another pot of hot water, placed it behind the screen, and said, "Everyone made excuses to run away, and I don't want to be too close to Su Yu." Master Tang smiled and said, "These people are clever." Bai Shan, "But I saw that there seemed to be a lot of people standing outside the yard." "Brother Tang, if you are so tight on the outside and loose on the inside, I'm afraid you won't be able to catch people if you lead them out." Master Tang said indifferently, "Eunuch Wu is a little nervous, but everyone should come back to stay at night, and then it won't be considered tight. He is not waiting now, but at night and tomorrow morning." So Master Tang decided to stay in the palace tonight. He bumped into Bai Shan and said with a smile, "You and Bai Er will squeeze in at night and give me the bed." "Bai Shan, can senior brother stay in the palace?" Master Tang said, "His Royal Highness agrees." Bai Shan was speechless. In the afternoon, Bai Shan and the others had to go to class, so after the medicine was boiled, Man Bao brought the medicine in. They checked the time and then left to go to class. Master Tang was in no hurry to leave. He sat on the chair outside the screen in a daze. When Man Bao came out, he looked up at her. "How is it?" Man Bao said, "She is not seriously injured. Let's see if she wants to live. If she wants to live, she will wake up tomorrow. If she doesn't want to live, she may not wake up." Master Tang raised his eyebrows, "So serious?" "She has injuries all over her body, her fingernails are all pulled out, and she has frostbite. It should be because the prudence department is not clean. There are a lot of dirty things in her wound." Man Bao said, "A person's will is very important. Those who want to live can climb over the mountains, but in the end they can't survive because they have reached the limit of their bodies and can't do anything. Those who don't want to live, even if there is a wide avenue in front of her, if she doesn't move, she will drown." Master Tang looked at her in surprise, couldn't help but reached out and touched her forehead, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong with you? How do you think about these things at such a young age?" Man Bao's mood has been a little bad since she saw Su Yu. At this time, when she heard Master Tang ask, her eyes turned red with grievance. "I just don't understand, what are they doing these things for?" She said, "There are so many things to do in this world, so many skills to learn, and so many books that have not been read yet. If they don't learn their skills well, why do they think about harming others? This is good, not only hurting others, but also hurting myself. Man Bao said, I know that the servants and maids in this palace are not even people in their eyes, they are the most helpless, but no, they think they are not human if they are not human. Man Bao reached out and touched his tears, but in the end he couldn't help it, so he fell on the table and cried. It was the first time Mr. Tang saw her like this, and he was at a loss for a while. You, don't cry, this has nothing to do with you. Man Bao shook his head, I thought my heart was hard enough before, I could feel it, she is not a good person, at least she is definitely not a good person for me, she is going to hurt me, it is not wrong for me to expose her, but now looking at her like this, I don't know if it's right or wrong. Master Tang asked softly, if you do it again, will you still mention her to His Highness? Inside the screen that the two of them could not see, Su Yu's fingers flexed slightly. Keek detected that her heartbeat and breathing were different, and was about to warn Man Bao when suddenly a piece of data came, and it immediately went quiet. Down and receive data as usual. The research institute is urging him through the main system, hoping that he can urge the host of his world to collect as many meteorites as possible as soon as possible. That thing has now been divided by various planets, and the research institute on the encyclopedia has only been allocated a little, and it seems to be almost exhausted at present. Keek glanced at Manbao, who was still wiping tears, and received the data, but did not communicate with her immediately. Of course, the main system was still paying attention to it, so it did not remind Manbao. Su Yu seemed to be awake for a while. Manbao was thinking about Master Tang's words, and after thinking about it, she nodded, I will, even for the sake of truth and justice. But brother, in this case, can we really find out the truth and give everyone justice? Master Tang fell silent and did not speak for a long time. Manbao wiped away his tears and said, I already feel it, even the last time I checked Zhou Yahao and Prince Gong, you didn't feel so sad. I really can't think of anyone in this world who is more powerful than them. Master Tang twitched the corners of his mouth and forced a smile, have you figured it out at the end? I figured it out, it's your majesty. Master Tang was startled, his eyes widened at Manbao, he couldn't help reaching out and touching her forehead, what are you thinking about every day with your little head, how could it be your majesty? Manbao patted his hand and said, Shan Bao said, he said that the reason why you and Lord Yin were able to find out about Prince Gong last time was because His Majesty made up his mind, and if the truth cannot be found this time, then it will only be that His Majesty has not made up his mind. Manbao paused and said, or, he can't make up his mind. Master Tang stayed silent for a longer time this time, and finally he sighed faintly and said, Manbao, things in this world are like this, not everything can go according to one's wishes, I don't know if this matter can be resolved in the end. I can't give everyone justice, but I will try my best to find out the truth. Manbao was lying down on the table. Master Tang didn't know how to comfort her, and asked, have all the injuries on Su Yu been dealt with? Manbao shook his head, I still need to clean my fingers. I'm going to take a break and deal with that eye drain. Master Tang suddenly remembered something, I found a food container in the kitchen just now. It seems to be yours. Have you eaten? Manbao shook his head, I don't want to eat. This is really strange, before when the sky fell, she would not want to eat it. Master Tang couldn't help but ask, Su Yu is so important. Manbao shook his head, and after thinking about it, he explained, I just think it's weird. I think she became like this because of me, but the root cause doesn't seem to be the case. Things in the world are too difficult, I seem to be in being trapped and moving forward, I can't help myself. Master Tang smiled, got up and said, what a fool, why do you think so much since it's so difficult? Which people in this world are not surrounded by momentum? See you at 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1736. Man Bao, is there no one exception? Have. Who is it? Madman, Master Tang reached out and patted her on the head. Basically, such people will not be able to do anything in this life, they are not well known, and even their family members have abandoned them. I never thought of doing this. A lunatic. Sometimes you need to compromise, in order to do more, for a longer-term future. He smiled and said, I don't want to take care of the local affairs, I just focus on investigating the case, but I am a little Jinchi, who would dare to let me be the Minister of Punishment and inspect the world as soon as I come up? So I can only go step by step. Go up, that's a compromise. Tang County Magistrate said, even if I can't give them justice now, I will try my best to find out the truth and give them this justice in the future. Man Bao thought about it and nodded. Okay, let's eat first, and if you don't want to eat, you have to eat some after that. She turned and went to the kitchen to bring her food box to her. The food was already a bit cold, but Man Bao was in no mood to pay attention at the moment, and Master Tang was not someone who could take care of people, so he sat on the side and watched her eat cold food. After Man Bao took a few bites, she couldn't take it anymore. Master Tang saw that she couldn't take it anymore and didn't force her. He said, I'll send someone else to take care of her tonight, so you don't need to stay here. Man Bao, I don't live too far. The magistrate Tang smiled and said, this is for your safety. You can come and see her again tomorrow morning. Man Bao asked, what if she has a high fever again at night? Tang County Magistrate said with deep eyes, it's not necessarily better to live than to die. Man Bao hesitated for a while or asked the question he had always suspected in his heart, Shuexiang Tang, have you ever thought about it, what if it wasn't her? Tang County Magistrate gave her a condescending look and said, judging from her confession, there is no such possibility. When Man Bao heard this, he didn't know if he was relieved or sighed, but he stopped talking anyway. The county magistrate Tang left, and the medicinal residues should have been cleaned up by now, and he still had to go to the Thai hospital. Man Bao sat in a daze for a while, then got up and turned into the screen. She washed her hands, and when her hands were dry, she took Suyu's fingers and looked at it. She started to take out the knife bag from the medicine cabinet, and picked to give her a smaller knife and tweezers to clean her fingers. Suyu seemed to feel the pain, she flinched and struggled a bit, tried her best to open her eyes, and fell into a drowsy sleep after facing Man Bao for a moment. Man Bao sat on the stool and cleaned her fingers little by little, then applied medicine and bandages. It took more than an hour to finish the work, and Bai Shan and the others were about to finish class. Man Bao moved her stiff neck, put her wrapped hands gently under the quilt, and wiped the sweat from her forehead with a handkerchief. She reached out and touched her forehead. It should be because the medicine had an effect, and the burn was gone now. It seems that she wants to live, otherwise, even if she takes medicine and gets needles, she will not retreat so quickly. But she didn't seem to wake up, so Eunuch Wu brought 2 palace maids over to take a look. These 2 palace maids were chosen by him to guard Suyu. He felt a little regretful that Suyu was safe and sound in the afternoon. Those people were really calm. Man Bao saw the disappointment in Eunuch Wu's eyes, and thought to himself, if I were Suyu, I would definitely not want to wake up. When you wake up, you will be beaten, and only a fool will wake up. Man Bao grabbed a pair of medicine for the 2 palace maids, and asked them to boil the medicine for Suyu to drink at night, then pack up and go back to his room. Eunuch Wu personally sent the person to the door. He smiled and said, Zhou Ziotai, I really have to work with you today, and when I came over, the prince asked you about you, so that you can go and see the crown princess and grandson if you have nothing to do. Man Bao said, I'll go when I'm free. Today's little emperor is fine too, right? I only saw it yesterday, the people are very nice, there is really no need to see it every day. It's very good, very good. Listening to Aunt Yu, it seems that it has grown a little more, and it looks more and more like His Royal Highness. That's a pity, the princess is obviously better looking. Man Bao returned to the room with the medicine box, first put the medicine box on the bookshelf, and sat in front of the bronze mirror for a while. When she heard the sound of running outside, she looked out the window. As soon as someone came to the window to look around, Man Bao and Bai Shan's heads almost collided. Bai Shan smiled, let's go to dinner, we have roast lamb tonight. Man Bao, who was still a little sad, was distracted and asked rather curiously, why does the kitchen still make roast lamb? Bai Shan has already urged her, come out quickly, the roast lamb should be eaten hot, it will be cold in a while. Man Bao reached out and closed the window, turned and was about to run out. He ran to the door and remembered, I have a lot of blood on my body, I haven't changed my clothes yet, wait for me. After that, he closed the door again, and ran back into the room to find clothes to change. By the time they ran to the cafeteria, Bai Erlang and Lu Huan had already started eating. Man Bao looked around and found that there was roast lamb on their table. Feng Zhongping and Yi Ziang were sitting next to each other, and occasionally stretched out his chopsticks to take a piece or two from the plate. Bai Erlang stretched out his hand and took one. Put a lot of them in the positions of Bai Shan and Man Bao, and beat Feng Zhongping and Yi Ziang, who also wanted to steal mutton from them. Man Bao ran to his seat and sat down, and the aroma of roast lamb came over the surface, which was not much worse than the venison they roasted before. She sniffed and asked curiously, why aren't there others, just our table? Yin Or pointed at Bai Shan with a smile, he bought it with money. Man Bao gave a wow and praised, you are really rich. Bai Shan also sat down with a smile, took her a piece of roast lamb from his plate, and said with a smile, hurry up, it's the first time I've eaten roast meat made by the kitchen in the palace, and I don't know how it tastes. Man Bao rolled a piece and ate it, his eyes brightened, and he nodded again and again, it's much more delicious than our own. She raised her head and asked Bai Erlang and Lu Huan, have you eaten? Lu Huan said with a smile, we've already eaten, and the rest is yours. Brother Feng always stretches out his chopsticks to grab it, so Bai Er put it all on your plate. Feng Zhongping turned his head and smiled at her, it's delicious to eat together. Man Bao let him, he waved his hand again, put down his chopsticks and said with a smile, forget it, this mutton will get angry after eating too much. I ate better just now. Bai Erlang stretched out his bowl and said, come on, give me 2 slices. Man Bao thought for a while, and then took a piece for him, and Bai Shan also smiled and took a piece for him. Bai Erlang glanced at them angrily and lowered his head to eat mutton. After making a fuss and having a good meal, Man Bao's mood really improved. When Master Tang came to play with them with his hands behind his back, they were already sitting on the corridor railings in the courtyard, kicking their legs and talking. Master Tang sat down beside them, ignoring that there were many people listening to them, saying, the hospital has checked the dregs and records, and the poison needle should have been soaked outside the palace. He glanced at the delicate building of the East Palace with a smile, but I'm very curious, there are really so many spies in the East Palace, can they do this silently? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1737. He couldn't understand this question, let alone Bai Shan and the others, so everyone sat with him in a silent daze. Man Bao shook his legs, and when it was getting dark, he jumped off the railing and said, I'll go and give Suyu another needle, and I'll see her when I wake up tomorrow morning. Seeing that she had run far away, the Tang County magistrate turned around and said to Bai Shan, I don't have time in the past 2 days to take her out for a walk, maybe I'm in a better mood. Bai Erlang couldn't help asking, this is the palace, where can we go? The county magistrate Tang said with a smile, "Where can't you go? It's better to walk in the garden than to stay in the library. When people want to think wildly, they have to move." Bai Shan was thoughtful. This night, many people couldn't sleep well, including Man Bao. Even if she had already paid Keek to stare at Suyu, she would warn her if anyone attacked her, so that she could not only catch people, but also have time to catch them. Save it. Unfortunately, nothing happened one night, and the gates of the courtyards were unlocked the next day. Eunuch Wu and Master Tang paid attention, and no one came to inform them of the accident until dawn. At this time, the palace maids in each hospital had already packed themselves up and started to change shifts with the people on duty, which was one of the 3 most lively periods of the day. Man Bao also learned the result from Keek. Last night, Suyu never woke up or had a fever, and there was nothing unusual around her house. While washing his face, Man Bao complained to Keek in his heart, "The points spent on Suyu are the most injustice. Although it is not as much as that of His Royal Highness, it is not worth it at all." Keek thought so too, but he couldn't agree now, so he took the opportunity to translate the data he received yesterday and relay it to her, encourage the host to recover all the meteorites left in this world as soon as possible. Man Bao wiped his face and said, "What's the hurry? I also think about it, but I'm still an official now. Do you know what it means to be in the officialdom and can't help yourself? I'm like this." Keek felt that there was nothing wrong with the silent host yesterday. Man Bao continued to ramble, "And this meteorite is not my collection task, it's nothing to do later. Those people from the western regions will go back and will definitely publicize those stones as poisonous stones, and they will definitely stay far away." Keek took a screenshot of what she said and reported it directly to the main system and the encyclopedia. The main system has no emotions, and I don't think there is anything wrong with this, but the encyclopedia museum is about to be depressed when it receives the video report transferred from the main system. In order to prevent malicious competition when they were originally designed, restrictions were imposed in the subsystem early on. The points reward given by the encyclopedia can only be used for the things included in the subsystem itself. Now we can't even tempt her with points. We have done research on the host of this world. She is not very dependent on our world, and it is difficult to tempt her to use technology higher than their world as a reward, the researcher said, because according to statistics, the most things she buys through the system mall are sugar and flowers. And these two are too cheap to say, there are alternatives in their world, and they are not children, who would really go all the way to collect research materials for them for a candy and a flower. And the living environment in that world is very harsh. It may be difficult for her to travel so far to collect materials for us in a short period of time. To discuss these things at this moment, it is better to think about what we should use to induce her to take the initiative to collect for us. After looking for so many reasons, in fact, there is only one, and the benefits are not enough. One person said, as long as the interests are sufficient, human beings can do things at the risk of being beheaded. How did 0531 guide her? Didn't she say that she was very young when she was bound? Why is she not enough dependent? The silent main system made an emotionless voice on the screen. 0531 only has the responsibility of guiding the host to complete the recording task, and has no other responsibilities. Although there are still some regrets and dissatisfaction in their hearts, they also know that 0531 did not violate the procedure. But it was only half an afternoon. Keek and Man Bao, who had just posted the screenshot, didn't know anything about it. They wiped their faces innocently and happily, and then went to see Suyu with the medicine box. Man Bao reached out and touched her forehead. Seeing that the fever had subsided, he took off the gauze on her fingers while she didn't want to eat breakfast. The two palace maids who were sent to take care of Suyu stood by and watched, and they were startled when they saw the rolling flesh of the untied gauze. The two looked at each other, their faces turning pale. Man Bao heard the movement and looked up. Seeing that they seemed to be younger than her, he smiled and said, "You guys go down to eat first, I'll remedicate her, and you can come back later." A palace maid asked with a pale face, "Is there anything you need us to do, Lord Zhou Xiao?" Man Bao smiled and said, "Go and boil a pot of boiling water." The two little palace maids went down to boil water together. Man Bao untied the cloth wrapped around her fingers, looked at the wound carefully, and took out a jar of medicinal powder from the medicine cabinet. The small kitchen has been boiling water, they added a few fires and it boiled, and the two of them came in with a pot. Man Bao asked them to find a bowl, poured some medicinal powder into the bowl, and poured boiling water into it. The water slowly turned dark red, and turned black again. She wiped her wound with a clean gauze dipped in some medicine. It seemed to be in pain. Suyu moved and slowly opened his eyes. Seeing her wake up, the two palace maids immediately turned around happily and ran out to inform Eunuch Wu and Lord Tang. "Eunuch Wu, Lord Tang, Suyu is awake." Master Tang looked at Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu said with a smile, "Master Tang, let's go to interrogate first, and our family will not go first, otherwise too many people will go, and people will not be able to do it." Master Tang smiled and nodded, got up and walked over. Man Bao met her eyes, and the two looked at each other silently for a while, then Man Bao lowered his eyes and continued to wipe her wound, saying, "The medicine can be applied after wiping." Suyu didn't speak, but shook his head slightly. When Master Tang entered the room, the screen was still separated, so he coughed lightly outside the screen. Man Bao turned his head and glanced at it and said, "Come in." Master Tang went around the screen and smiled slightly when he saw Suyu awake. "Let's talk." Suyu shrank his fingers, but there was no expression on his face, but Man Bao noticed the change in her mood, so he couldn't help but quietly raised his head and glanced at the county magistrate, and blinked at him quietly. The magistrate Tang smiled slightly, knowing that Suyu was not completely unresponsive, and he was more confident. In order to have a good conversation, he looked left and right, and seeing that she was just bandaging her fingers, he simply put away the screen, then dragged a chair from the edge of the table and sat down opposite her bed, looked at her and asked, "Suyu, have you not spoken yet?" Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1738. Suyu said in a hoarse voice, "Sir, this servant is wronged." Master Tang couldn't help frowning. He didn't expect Suyu to be so stubborn, and he still refuses to change his words. He turned his head to look at Man Bao. Man Bao didn't look at him, but glanced at Suyu, then poured a glass of water from the small table next to her and put it to her mouth. "Drink some water." Suyu glanced at Zhou Man, raised his head slightly and took a sip of water. Seeing that they were having a hard time talking like this, Man Bao simply raised the pillow and helped Suyu sit up. Master Tang has been keeping an eye on Suyu, seeing that although she frowned, she didn't say anything. So she is still afraid of pain, but a person who is afraid of pain still doesn't say anything after being tortured to the point of death. Master Tang stared thoughtfully at Suyu's face. After Man Bao helped her to sit up halfway, it was much more convenient to pour water. She poured her 2 glasses of water in a row, and then began to continue the work at hand. Master Tang asked, "Suyu, are you worried about your relatives at home?" Suyu lowered his eyes and did not speak, but Master Tang promised, "As long as you are willing to confess, this official can keep your family safe. I remember you still have parents, brothers, and sisters at home." Suyu said with a blank face, "Sir, the slaves are really wronged. The needles of the imperial physician Zhou were not replaced by the slaves. The imperial physician Zhou is here. If you don't believe me, ask her. We have always been good friends. How could I harm the imperial physician Zhou?" Man Bao was already bandaging her fingers. Hearing that, he raised his head and looked at her quietly. Suyu also lifted his eyelids and looked at her quietly. The two didn't speak for a while. Master Tang stared at Suyu and did not speak. He always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't say what was wrong. Master Tang stared at Suyu for a while. Suyu looked at Master Tang calmly for a while, then seemed to remember his identity, then shrank back, pretending to be timid, lowered his eyes to avoid Master Tang's gaze. Master Tang got up and said, "You should take the medicine first, and we will talk after you finish taking the medicine." He had to think about what was wrong with Suyu just now. He turned around and was about to go out, when a little waiter looked in from outside. He frowned and asked, "Where are you from?" Manbao and Suyu turned their heads and looked up together. The timid servant who was hiding behind the door walked in and said restrainedly, "The slave is from the Changguan pavilion. Master Bai asked me to deliver breakfast to the imperial Dr. Zhou." Mr. Tang, who had his back to Suyu, and Manbao, who turned to look at the little maid, didn't notice that Suyu's complexion changed greatly when he saw the little maid, and his already pale complexion became even more bloodless. The little maid did not recognize Suyu. He just glanced at Suyu curiously and said to Zhou Man, who was sitting beside the bed, "Dr. Zhou, where do I keep this food box?" Master Tang stepped forward to take a serious look at him, and asked him to put the food box on the table to open it, and looked at the food inside. It was indeed the breakfast prepared by the kitchen in the palace today. Manbao was a little curious. "Why are you here to deliver, Ren Xiang, Ma Fuming and Gao Gu?" Ren Xiang was the little palace maid who was newly transferred to her to take care of her, and Gao Gu was the servant in charge of taking care of Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. Normally, either Gao Gu or Ma Fuming ran errands for Bai Shan. The little maid bowed and replied, "Eunuch Wu has transferred them all to question them. We were temporarily selected from the Yeding Palace, and we only ran errands for a few days." Master Tang remembered. Last night, he deduced that the needles were soaked outside and sent in. Eunuch Wu had already decided to screen the people in the East Palace again. Not only the Changguan Pavilion, but also the place where the prince and the others lived had to be screened, and even Lord Yin came over in person. He nodded, closed the food box, and asked casually, "What's your name?" "The slave's name is Suan." Master Tang nodded and waved, "Okay, leave the food box, you can go." Yes, Suan bowed and stepped back. Master Tang followed him out, watching him walk away, then stood in the yard in a daze, thinking carefully about what was wrong with Suyu just now. When Manbao turned back, Suyu was already leaning on the pillow, and there was nothing wrong except that his face was pale. Manbao continued to bandage her fingers. After wrapping it up, he stood up and said, "I'll go and call Master Tang in, and I'll leave now." "Lord Zhou," Suyu said suddenly, "I'm a little hungry, can I have something to eat?" When Manbao heard this, he subconsciously suspected that there was poison in her food. Keek scanned her and said, "Except for the excessive salt, I didn't find anything wrong." "Manbao." She stepped forward and picked it up, took it to the bedside, and dragged a stool to put it on. "Let's eat, let's go together. There are many kinds of breakfast food in the food box, but the amount is not large: small steamed buns, clear porridge, 2 dishes of side dishes and a few pieces of meat patties." Manbao wanted to give her the bowl of porridge, but who knew she picked up the chopsticks first and said, "The last thing slaves like to eat is porridge." Manbao gave her a strange look, nodded and took the porridge, and couldn't help asking Keek, "Is it really not poisonous?" Keek, "No." Manbao lowered his head to eat porridge. Suyu wanted to eat the buns, but her fingers were injured, so of course she couldn't hold them. She raised her head and saw Manbao was looking at her curiously. She smiled at her, then put down her chopsticks and reached out to pick up a bun and took a bite. Manbao breathed a sigh of relief, and found nothing unusual. Suyu slowly ate a steamed bun, and Manbao had already eaten a bowl of porridge and meat patties, so he deliberately gave her the small steamed bun. Seeing that she had eaten the last bite, she was about to pack up and leave, but Suyu suddenly stretched out her hand to hold the food box, and looked up at Manbao. Dr. Zhou, can I ask you one thing? Manbao was stunned for a moment and asked, what are you begging me for? Please help me take care of someone. She looked over the window at the head of the bed and looked at Master Tang outside, and said quickly, promise me, I will let you do a great job. Manbao shook his head and said, I only save people, not investigate cases. I'll help you call Master Tang in. No, Suyu reached out and grabbed her hand, with a firm face, I can't trust him, only you. Manbao didn't understand why she suddenly changed. Why, Tang Xuexian is very good. However, Suyu shook his head, no, there are not many good people inside and outside the palace. Those high-ranking officials who talk about serving the country and the people are also sane people. I can't trust them, I only trust you. She said, you should let me down. I'll tell you how the poison needles got into the palace. I still have a list in my hand, and I'll give you all of them. Manbao asked, do you want me to save your life? Suyu, I won't lie to you, I'm not that sure, but I think Brother Tang, he can. Suyu shook his head, I want to keep another person. Who? Suyu was silent for a while and then said, just the person who came in just now, Imperial Physician Zhou, you can save him from the palace, or find a way to send him to Huangchuang. I don't ask for anything else, just ask save his life. She looked at Manbao with tears in her eyes and said, I heard everything you said yesterday. I don't ask much. I just want him to be a person, or a slave, as long as he is a person. See you at 11 o'clock. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1739. Manbao looked at her in surprise, struggled and found that he couldn't break free. Seeing that the gauze she had just wrapped was dyed red again, he knew that it was his fingers that were bleeding due to force. She frowned, and simply stopped struggling. While asking Keek to cross out some of the points to stare at Suan, she asked, that little servant just now, called Suan. Who is he? Seeing that she wasn't leaving, Suyu leaned back on the pillow, just so that the curtain of the bed blocked the window. She whispered, that's my brother. Manbao was surprised. Suyu looked up at Manbao, pointed to the small stool beside the bed and said, Master Zhou, can you sit down and talk? Manbao couldn't help but glanced at Master Tang outside the window. Seeing that he was still looking up in a daze, he sat down. Is he your brother? But on your document. Suyu said, that's not my family. Manbao asked, what about your aunt who comes to see you every month? It's also fake, Suyu said with an expressionless face, everything is fake. My relatives in this world are only Suan. But he's not a bad person, he doesn't know anything, he doesn't even know that I'm his sister. Suyu lowered his voice, put his hand on the bedside, and said softly, he was too young when he entered the palace. I staggered, so I have no memory. Unlike me, I was sensible when I entered the palace. Manbao opened her mouth wide. Obviously the news had a big impact on her, so it took a while for her to regain her senses. Suyu looked at Zhou Man, looked at her expectantly and said, Master Zhou, I know you are kind-hearted and very talkative in front of the prince. I am willing to tell you everything, including all the spies I know. I have a list, I'll tell you where it is, just give him a life, okay? Manbao's throat tightened a little, and he asked, didn't you say he doesn't know anything? Since that's the case, His Royal Highness will not embarrass him. You might as well tell Brother Tang Xuexian to exchange your life. Suyu shook his head, no, he didn't know anything before. As long as I was still alive, they wouldn't use him, but my chess piece is going to be scrapped. Letting him get on with me is the point of no return. Her tears fell drop by drop, Being a slave in the palace is still half a person. Be cautious and still survive, but once they are used, it will not even be half a person. She looked at Man Bao with tears in her eyes and said, I know, you have suspected me for a long time. Several times, you didn't want me to organize your bookshelf. When I stared at you at night, I could feel that you seemed to also looking at me through a wall. Man Bao and Keek. But you didn't expose me. Until the accident happened, I heard Eunuch Wu, and you interceded for me and His Highness the Crown Prince Su. You looked at her and said, Master Zhou, I can only trust you. Man Bao opened his mouth, looked at Master Tang outside the window again, and finally nodded, tell me, who is the one who ordered you? Su Yu shook his head, I don't know. Man Bao. Seeing Zhou Man's eyes widen, Su Yu said, I really don't know, I only take tasks from my aunt, and I will do whatever the people above ask me to do. Who sent you into the palace, you don't know. Su Yu nodded. It is precisely because of this that she has never dared to betray. She said, I don't remember where my family is, but I only remember when we were 5 or 6 years old, there was a military disaster there, some people rebelled, those bandit soldiers rushed into my house, my father protected us and ran out, and then my father died, my mother and we were separated, and at that time there was only my brother left by my side. My younger brother was only 2 years old at that time, and the road was not easy to walk, so we could only beg on the road. Su Yu said, we don't know if our luck is good or bad, but one person saw our sister and brother and put us on the road. It was taken. At that time, he took away a lot of children like us who lost their parents or separated from their parents, and raised us in a village. We had to learn to read and learn a lot of things every day, because I learned fast, so I get to see my brother once a month. Man Bao asked, you study separately? Su Yudeo, boys and girls have to be separated and can't meet each other. Even, girls will be taken to other villages when they grow up to a certain age, and they won't be shown to other girls. I heard from Auntie what they mean. Can't let people remember their appearance, even if we are together. Man Bao shuddered. I studied in Zhuangzi for 2.5 years in total. When I was less than 8 years old, they named me Su Yu, and they sent me to a family named Su in Suzhou, which is on my document. My parents' house, from where I was brought into the palace, they only took me away from Zhuangzi, but later I saw several familiar people in Yeding Palace, and I asked them quietly, and they agreed with them. I was bought from all over the same year. Man Bao couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. In the beginning, they didn't let us do anything, they just let us abide by the palace rules and live in the palace. Su Yu said, the aunt who brought me said that some people may not use it for a lifetime. And those who don't use it are blessed. That's why I've always acted cautiously and didn't dare to stand out. Su Yu thought of something, his face full of pain, but 2 years later, I saw Suan when I was out of Enfaman to deliver things, and I saw him holding a big broom is cleaning the Shenyi gate. They lied to me, Su Yu said, they said that as long as I worked hard in the palace, they would let Suan read in the Zhuangzi, and not send it outside, but the second year I entered the palace, they sent someone was sent to the palace, he was only 5 years old, only 5 years old. And Su said that it was because I was disobedient and I didn't work hard in the palace, so the master decided to send Suan in. She also said that he is only entering the palace now. If I am not obedient, then the master will abandon me and use him. Su Yu said with tears, I know, in this palace, either I die or he dies, the 2 brothers and sisters have to choose one to go into the water. I don't know who the master is, but I guessed it later. And Su is lying, all of them are lying, the master may not even know who I am, and it is even more unlikely that he designed it for me as a little bastard. My brother. Everything is false, including the promises made to me, the things that have been said to me. Su Yu stared at Zhou Man with blood-red eyes, they just use us as chess pieces. In order to keep us chess pieces alive, All means can be used. Lord Zhou, tell me, can I still trust them? Man Bao shook his head again and again. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1740. You don't think you can believe it, don't you? Suyu was affirmed and in a better mood. She stretched out her hand to wipe the tears from her face and said, they said that as long as I grit my teeth and say nothing, they will save me. Yes, they also said that as long as I don't expose it, they can send our sister and brother away afterwards. A sharp light flashed in her eyes, and she said word by word, they are lying, everything is fake. She was just sent out from the Department of Penalties, and she was only treated by Zhou Man, and they couldn't wait to let her brother come over to threaten her. She knew what they meant, she would satisfy them, but she would no longer trust them. Master Tang, who was thinking in the yard, suddenly thought of something, his eyes brightened, he turned around and walked towards the house. Man Bao was still immersed in Suyu's life, but Suyu had already heard the eager footsteps. She looked up at Zhou Man, put her hand on the chopsticks in the food box next to her, and said quickly, Mr. Zhou, there are 5 plum trees at the back of your room, and there is a jar under the second tree on the left side facing the fence. The jar contains what you want, while the second tree on the right side is under the jar. It's buried with medicinal dregs. Her voice just fell, and Master Tang had already opened the door and walked in quickly. He said, Suyu, the Su family in Suzhou is not you, what's the matter with you? He saw tears on their faces. Suyu had already cleaned up his expression, glanced at Master Tang, and continued to say with a blank face, Master, this servant is wronged. Master Tang. She looked at Man Bao with hope in her eyes, and Man Bao wiped away her tears. Hearing her words, she couldn't help but raised her head and said, Suyu, Brother Tang can be trusted? Suyu smiled at Zhou Man and said, Master Zhou, did you promise me? Man Bao was about to speak when Suyu grabbed the chopsticks on the food box and shoved them into his neck. Man Bao's eyes widened, subconsciously jumping up to cover her neck, but Master Tang was faster than her. He felt bad when Suyu picked up the chopsticks, almost in sync with her movements. Blocked, but still a step too late. He covered her neck, but after a moment blood poured out of his palm. You. Seeing the witness commit suicide in front of him, Master Tang was so angry that he couldn't say a word. Man Bao threw up trembling all over and pressed the acupuncture points on her neck with shaking hands. The surging blood was much less, but it was still gushing out. Suyu couldn't say a word, she stretched out a hand and grabbed Man Bao's hand tightly, her eyes fixed on her. Man Bao nodded in panic, nodded several times in a row, and said, I promise you, I promise you. Suyu's mouth moved, but he couldn't say a word. Man Bao couldn't tell what she was going to say. Keek was also shocked by this scene. After being silent for a while, he secretly connected the two people's brain waves. Man Bao seemed to hear Suyu saying in her mind, don't tell him, don't tell him. Man Bao burst into tears, nodded and said, I won't tell him, I won't tell him. Suyu released her hand, the light in her eyes slowly extinguished, her eyes gradually closed, and she leaned against Master Tang behind her as if she had no bones. Slipped a bit. Master Tang felt that there was no movement on her neck, so he couldn't help looking at Man Bao. Man Bao continued to press her acupuncture points, his face was full of tears, and no one could see it clearly. Master Tang looked at Suyu, then looked at Man Bao, and finally put him on the bed with a sigh, then pulled Man Bao up and said, go out, I'll have someone come over to clean up. Man Bao's hands and feet were a little weak. She had never seen any patient before, and she even cut open a person's stomach. Obviously, she only had chopsticks stuck in her neck. It was not much bloodier than the cases she had seen before, but she couldn't help herself. Master Tang also knew that she was still young, so she was probably frightened, so she took her out in a half hug. When Eunuch Wu heard the news and came with people, Su Yu's body was a little cold. He glanced at the chopsticks on her neck and asked with an ugly face, why did she suddenly commit suicide? Man Bao sat on the railing and didn't speak, his face was a little blank. Eunuch Wu turned his head to look at Master Tang. Master Tang has already guessed a few things, but he didn't say anything at this time, only slightly shook his head at Eunuch Wu and said, let's restrain people first. Eunuch Wu narrowed his eyes, she confessed. Master Tang glanced at Man Bao and said, no, she said she was wronged. Eunuch Wu's face became more and more ugly, and he was obviously angry. So far, on the day the princess gave birth, all those who might have come into contact with Zhou Man's medicine box died. Wu Gonggong lucked out, but still suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart, and waved someone to restrain Su Yu. When he turned his head and saw Zhou Man was dumbfounded, he sighed and went up to comfort her. Sir Zhou Xiao, this matter has nothing to do with you, you are just a doctor, you can cure a disease, can you still cure someone who wants to die? However, Eunuch Wu was still a little puzzled, why did Su Yu suddenly commit suicide? Before her bones were very hard, he thought she would only be beaten to death or beheaded. Seeing that Man Bao was ignoring people, Master Tang was a little worried, so he still asked people to call Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. Bai Shan and the others didn't attend the class when they received the news, so they hurried over. Seeing Bai Shan and Bai Er, Man Bao cried out with a wow. Not to mention Master Tang and Eunuch Wu were relieved. Bai Shan glanced at Su Yu who was being carried out, grabbed Man Bao and left, let's go. Take Man Bao away. Man Bao couldn't cry so much, and she was convulsed in the end. She has grown so big and has seen people injured, sick, and even dead due to various reasons, but killing herself is the first time she's seen it. Faced with such a straight face, Man Bao has all kinds of feelings in his heart, but at this time it is more sad and powerless. Bai Shan took her back to the room, reached out to wipe the tears from her face, and let her cry without persuading her. Bai Erlang was also a little nervous at first, but he didn't even see Su Yu's face, he only saw a bloody quilt carrying the person out, and he didn't feel deeply. Seeing that Man Bao was still crying, he looked at Bai Shan with a bitter face, aren't you going to persuade him? Bai Shan, do you advise? Bai Erlang, even assassins have been encountered before, and it is not uncommon to see dead people. Why are you crying so fiercely this time? Man Bao looked at the two with his red and swollen eyes, and accused, can't you comfort me and sympathize with her? Bai Erlang asked in surprise, she won't be innocent, will she? Man Bao said in a sullen voice, no, she calmed down and thought more and more, she's a bad person. Then why are you crying? Man Bao paused and said, but she could have not been a bad person, and she is only 3 or 4 years older than me. See you at 4 p.m.